Well, that's potentially embarrassing. If everybody can see the video. Well, welcome to another episode of CollabTalk. How's everybody doing?
Well, we're doing great.
Right here, two people.
I am wow. Naomi,
Excellent.
move.
Well, and there's Naomi. Naomi's in a strange room. It's almost kind of like THX, kind of.
I think she's in a dressing room
there. But well, welcome to the show. This is webisode number 7. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm here outside of Redmond, Washington, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer for BZ. Little job change in the last week and a half. But just to kind of introduce ourselves, go around, and then we'll kind of get underway. And so, Marc, over to you.
Hi, I'm Marc Anderson. I'm the only SharePoint MVP left on this panel. I'm proudly one of them. I live in Boston, and I am a consultant, and I do my own consulting thing.
Oh. Excellent. And then Ben.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Niaulin. I'm a dude, a geek, do SharePoint-ish stuff. I work at ShareGate here in Montreal. Happy to be here. Got some lovely topics. Lots have happened at WPC, so very, very exciting. And of course, we've got Naomi with us as well.
Are you there, Naomi? Can you hear us? All right.
All right. So.
Okay. Good job. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. I know. Hopefully we can get things figured out there. So the show is sponsored by our company, so BZ, Simpraxis Consulting, ShareGate, and many worlds that we represent. And here's what we're going to cover today. So there's a few different things that are happening. Obviously, this is, if you've never participated, it's very conversational. If you have questions, you've got the chat, the attendee chat. We're going to be monitoring that throughout. We're also monitoring under hashtag CollabTalk out on Twitter. So if there are questions coming in, comments, then we'll definitely respond to those. We're going to talk about, well, briefly, some of our takeaways. I know Naomi and I both, Marc and Ben, you both watched keynotes, though, streaming?
That's right. It's been fun.
So the topic of the month are the workload-specific admin roles, so new capability. We're going to go through and talk about some of what's been going on around tasks, and Ben's going to take the lead on that. I'm going to take the. We're going to go through some of the latest happening in the Yammer to spearhead that. Hopefully, Naomi's able to spearhead that topic. And then Marc is going to cover change management inside the Office 365 world, because I know that question comes up a lot. A lot of people asking, how do we manage this within our development lifecycle and within our activities, operationalize the change management activities. So we'll discuss that. So from WPC, anything really stood out about the event? Any you aware of?
on-premises and very, very important, and that they had never any plans to stop building it or to stop working on it. It's just that that product works on a 3-year cycle, whereas Office 365 is almost every week, almost. So it's definitely been getting a lot of more traction. So people speculated, hey, myself included, of course. So it was nice to hear that from up above, if we can say it like that, from the Redmond headquarters, that SharePoint on-premises is continuing. In fact, they saw that it's 25% increase even on their on-premises sales. So definitely some big news there. Mark, did you find anything in particular? I mean, I could go on for an hour about WPC, so definitely don't want to eat up the time there.
There in and stuff, but paying very little attention because just got too much work to do, which is a good thing.
That's a good problem to have, I think, Mark. Sorry. Sorry, I was going to jump in. I apologize for my video feed, but at least I can do the audio. Yeah, so it was a great conference. I thought it was really exciting to see a lot of the customers and the case studies that were actually coming through. So I think it felt differently from some of the other partner conferences that I've attended, just because the amount of customer stories were there. So, and it was really interesting to see how that was being showcased. I think we saw a lot of evidence of the new Microsoft. I really do. I felt it was very good. It was very upbeat messaging, and I thought the messaging, particularly around the cloud, was very tempered. So I felt this, the messaging we've seen about, hybrid and, it's not just cloud, right? I felt we saw in the marketplace that it was really exhibiting a lot of what Kevin Turner had called last year the challenger mindset, which was making sure it was not sort of Microsoft sitting on its laurels and sort of enjoying a kind of pseudo-monopoly in some areas, but instead was really going forward and saying, hey, we're really competing, we're out to win in lots of different areas, whether it's across devices, whether it was across software as services, as well as understanding productivity tools for end users. So it actually felt to me, for the first time ever, it felt to me much more like a customer-driven conference and partners as customers in the ecosystem versus actual, an actual partner conference where it's all, hey, it's us against the rest of the world. So it was really interesting to see that from my perspective. And I thought, seeing Julia up there was fantastic. Saying SharePoint, that was fantastic. And then Jeff Teeper a couple of days ago, on Twitter says he's going to be back. We all call him the father of SharePoint. I know he hates it, but we call him that. He's going to be back, running SharePoint and OneDrive. And really, I think seeing some of the changes and some of the highlights in the new technology, which was the keynotes that they broadcasted, which was fantastic. So the sessions themselves were crazy, right? There was so many people. It was like 14,000 people there. They're all Microsoft partners, all having a successful place in the ecosystem, and really rallying so that there's even more opportunity and things to do.
Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, where he kind of went through and gave a preview of his keynote. And he talked about that shift that's happening away from project-centric and resale-centric partners towards solution-based managed services and IP-based solutions. And what it really, in my mind, how Satya recapped this, and I think this is relevant for whether you're a partner or customer, is that Satya talked about it's not enough just to provide platform and these kind of chunks of technology. We have to look at this end-to-end, how these pieces come together, because that's what our customers are trying to do, and that's what we need to be able to solve. And so you saw some interesting announcements, like we're not going to get into it in this episode. It's actually slated for next month, but with the introduction of Gig Jam. If you're not aware of Project Gig Jam, it's something worth going out and taking a look at. But it is an attempt to pull together some disparate pieces and provide a solution, and in many ways kind of reinventing the way that people collaborate across these disparate tools. And it's just a really fascinating direction that Microsoft is now investigating. There's a lot to get there, and SharePoint is going to have a long story within that. I think there's definitely, we heard again and again and again that SharePoint, I think Microsoft is recognizing that they've neglected some of the messaging around SharePoint on-prem because it does continue to grow. And that's what we're here talking about, 365 as well as SharePoint on-prem. Let's jump into the topics. I mean, we're going to go into, I think, some of those subtopics next month for sure. But on our first topic here, who's jazzed about workload-specific admin roles?
I want to do jazz hands, but I can't. It's really killing me. It's killing me. Do the jazz hands.
Did it on your behalf. So what this is, it's not very complex topic as far as defining what it is. It's the ability now, instead of Office 365, instead of going in and having admin capabilities that are across all the various workloads. So when you look at your Outlook, your email-based workload, your SharePoint, the Skype for Business, that you have the ability to go in. If you have people that are designated as owners of those areas, you can create roles that are specific to those workloads. So it is something that you can go and break. If you have somebody that's in charge of communications, maybe they own the rest of the telephony, you want to give them that aspect. You can still give an individual the ability to manage all of those workloads, but you have the ability to parse that up. And it's really just that simple. But I don't know, what do folks think about this announcement? What are something impacts that you see from this, or gaps that it helped fill?
I see a lot of different things there. I think one of the coolest things really is to be able to understand having a bit more granularity in the permissions model to be able to do these things. Because I do feel like the more we take away this sort of centralized model where we're running stuff on-prem and we start distributing these permissions through the organization, having a different level is really important, having those different areas. And I think it's a good move generally, because we see a lot of it, in terms of people had put in all of these different functionalities, especially into Office 365. And then you have, basically you have the power of God, right? To do anything across the whole range of services, right? Whether it's across Exchange, across SharePoint, Yammer, all of the different services. And so being able to actually break that up into useful chunks from a role specificity, but also just from a security perspective, right? It's important, obviously, to be able to have a governance model for the different content that's in there, and making sure that people have appropriate level of permissions, and then being able to have, admin accounts to access those things in the right way at the right time for the organization. So especially when you have this distributed model and you have a lot of outsourcing, you have, a lot of different models in terms of the IT staffing that you use to administer some of these products now. So I'm very excited about that stuff. I think I really do think it's jazz hands, and it's good also to sort of leverage into the model going forward as you think about how you architect and govern these different platforms.
I think
to hop on that. Oh, go ahead.
I think the great thing from the customer perspective, from the actual end user perspective, is it potentially removes that single gate where there's one or two people who control everything. And you know, in almost every client where I've done work where it's of, you know, any consequential size, that person becomes a huge roadblock to progress. And unfortunately, that's because they've got a lot to do, and they're the only ones who can do that stuff. So if we can parse things out, you know, let's let these people manage metadata. Let's let these people manage Yammer. Let's however you want to split it out. I think that you actually put the control in the hands of the people who ought to have it, as opposed to this single sort of bottleneck. So I think from an end user perspective, this is probably a longer term, very exciting thing to do, more responsive infrastructure as opposed to the way it maybe typically has been in the past. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No, absolutely agree. I think it's really been well said, so there's nothing much to add. It's really about splitting it up and making sure that the right people is doing the pieces that need. The SharePoint admin isn't the other type of admin like before, right? The SharePoint admin isn't necessarily the Exchange admin or the Office 5, so then it makes even more sense to continue down that path and break it down. And again, to have the right people do the right thing. It's the same thing. I mean, if I compare to, it's not the same thing, but with SharePoint 2016, they've been talking about at Ignite how they would have this new workload kind of specific, not admin roles, but workload specific servers. It's the same concept, in my opinion, is to break down, to have servers do just what they need to be doing. And in the Office 365 admin standpoint, I think it's a same or similar concept. That's why it's happening, and that's why we need it. Very happy that it's out, definitely, especially as we gear towards, you know, Microsoft at the same time released the migration API, right? So it's trying to get enterprises and larger organizations to go to Office 365, and at the same time, with those scenarios, you need to have the ability to split those workloads, if we're going to call them by their names, to the different people in the organization that manage it. So perfect sense. Really happy to see it, especially with the vision that's in place.
You know, I think that, and Daryl makes a great point, is we could do these things on-prem, and that's, you know, when you hear Microsoft people talk about parity between online and on-prem, they're most often talking about the functionality itself of the platform, and not some of what we're accustomed to on the back end. Whether it's being able to go in and do root cause analysis of issues that you're experiencing, and being hampered by having to go through Microsoft support, where you can't just go and go through the log files and identify where those problems were. And so we need an expansion of that management layer. And so this is what we're seeing slowly expanded upon. This is just another addition where we're slowly but surely getting to the level of I wouldn't say control, the level of management that we have over our on-prem environments. So I think this is it's a great next step. We need to see more of this kind of parity between on-prem and online.
Do you think we'll see more in terms of even more split in terms of the content and the system? So we see right now there's these individual roles inside the different platforms. So if it's SharePoint or it's Exchange or Yammer or OneDrive, the question is then, do we see this model kind of evolving to who has rights over certain kinds of content even within there, and maybe it's a certain business process kind of owner? I wonder if that's where the platform will evolve to, or what do you guys think? No jazz hands for that, so I guess not. Oh, okay, I get the thought-provoking look. All right, Mark, go for it.
No, I was saying, Naomi, you're always so far ahead of us that we have to pause and think before we can respond to you.
That's always good. All right, okay. Well, I just wondered, because it's sort of thinking about how permissions would be distributed in an organization more broadly, and as we see some of these IT roles really evolving, you'll have a business owner for much of the content, right? And we always say that we have it as part of our governance plan. Question is, would we ever have provision actually in the platform for those kinds of roles and how they would manage the content, maybe separately from the technology? Just curious. So,
that would be awesome.
It's an idea. It would be awesome. I just wonder if that's where we'd go in a software as a service role. So. Get to work on that, Microsoft.
Probably done by now.
Well, I'm going to jump to the next topic. Topic number 2 here. What are your predictions for Wunderlist groups? So the group tasks, the MS project tasks, and the future of unified tasks. And Ben, if you can walk us through what's happening here.
Well, that's a very good question. Now, this one is a very particular one because it's hard to say, right? Microsoft is obviously has acquired a product or an app called Wunderlist. We've got groups growing and growing and growing and becoming the, if I dare say, the center of collaboration in this new vision of things. I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, SharePoint team sites are still there. We know that. Even I think Christophe, who had talked about here on Unity Connect online, I think, or I do believe it was during that conference, and he had even talked about how team sites will be part of that and already are part of groups. But we'll see where's that piece of task, right? If groups is going to be the center of collaboration, and it already provisioned a little bit of SharePoint document library. It already took a little bit of the Exchange calendar, took the Exchange conversations, took the OneNote notebook. Why not take a task piece from somewhere and put it in there as well? So, and obviously we've got MS Project going on and becoming part of the SharePoint as a service application, if I'm not mistaken. So, predictions, it's hard to say because there's NDA in there as well, so don't want to necessarily say, but if I had just to predict, I would definitely assume that something is going to be part of groups. Definitely, right? The same way where I'm expecting something to come in terms of chat rooms for a group as well, persistent chats, kind of like Slack in some ways, where we have Yammer. Oh, I forgot Yammer as well is pulled to groups. So I do expect to see something about Yammer. That's the next topic, Naomi. But yeah,
it also deserves jazz hands.
No, honestly, it's hard to say right now about tasks, but I do expect something real soon to be announced or to be talked about. Then reinventing it, right? We've seen them a lot in terms of innovation and taking the problem and trying to solve it differently. I'm expecting something to come for, workflows, as we talked about before, expecting something to come in terms of forms as well. But I think the next one that I'm definitely anticipating is something in terms of lightweight task management, probably, to come in the form of group task or team task. And obviously then there'll be an app for it, I can only assume, and that's where maybe Wunderlist may come in, but historically, it's tough to say what they're going to do with it. I don't know, Mark. What do you think about that?
I think that the slide is sort of indicative of the way this feels to me. It's a bit of a laundry list of things that people can pick and choose from, which, in my experience working with my clients, is just confusing as hell to people. So I'm hoping that there is a theory coming here, a grand unifying theory, right? Because there's been, I think, with a lot of sort of this grouping and some other groupings of functionality, there's been a little bit of let's throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And the sort of marketing rhetoric around that is, well, we're not going to make you do it any one way. We're going to let you have lots of different ways to do things. And I think that to a large degree, the marketplace sort of abhors that abundance of choice. I think that having a smaller set of maybe, a spectrum of options, 2 or 3 different options that provide, very light task management up to, sort of what project does, where you can build an aircraft carrier, is great. But too many things in the middle is a bit of a problem. So again, I'm hoping that we're going to see, and I believe we're going to see a little bit more consolidation. In effect, these different things within Microsoft end up competing with each other, and so none of them get the attention that they need. I'm hoping that some of the recent announcements about some reorganizations and restructuring stuff might actually get us a clearer strategy behind this stuff. That's my hope.
And, so I actually we have a poll. If we can move the poll out and everybody take a look at it. I know that there's a number of different ways that, even in my day-to-day, I have tasks that are Outlook-based. I'm a big Trello user. I've got a team, a Wunderlist going. So there's a few different places where, and I'm a very list-driven person. I actually have sitting next to me every day, lists, pen and paper as well, that I track some of these things. Just part of my OCD, I need to be able to cross something off. It needs to be, this activity. But it is interesting that, that this is finally kind of coming to the forefront. If you remember when SharePoint 2013 launched, I should look at the camera here. When 2013 was launched, one of the cool features that I thought out of it was some of the lightweight project integrations, this task-based capability. So it was the ability that if there's a project timeline anywhere in SharePoint that has your name associated with it, that it would show up on your profile. So you had a unified view of tasks that were assigned to you, so that you weren't having, like in the old days, the archaic world, project tasks assigned to you that you might not be aware of. Suddenly they become due and somebody is driving accountability to you, but you have no idea that these tasks existed. And so this idea that we can tie the things that are in my email to through SharePoint to these MS Project tasks through these project files was a very powerful story that kind of got lost along the way. The capability kind of went away. We're promised, hey, well, there's going to be a story long term, and then it just never really got answered. But then you add in other things. Another thought here too, and anybody can jump in on this, but is like dynamic CRM. So tasks that are created as part of these other workloads like CRM platform, and those things finding their way in as well. There's a real need for coming up with story, even if there is a reduction. This is my view. A reducing the functionality of any of these individual solutions. My preference would be for a unified task list rather than very robust standalone. But that's me. Right. Let's. We want to.
Yeah, I think Mark had me a grand unified theory. Oh yeah, let's have a look. So yeah, I have to agree with the rest of my fellow panelists. I really think tasks are somewhat of the. Of course, you did.
I think,
you totally did for me.
Matt said the tasks are a tool for individuals, and then tracking it. Sorry, Naomi, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think it's freezing for me sometimes. So yeah, I was just saying. I think tasks are one of those unknown areas that we haven't really explored as much as we should have done. We see so much reporting these days, right? So much around organizational dashboards, things around using management operating systems, basically to see the status of projects and try to wrap up all these results. And I think tasking at the individual level and then how it connects up into the enterprise project level is the thing has been missing. And so we're seeing a lot of dynamics, areas that people are getting into there. Obviously, it's really interesting to me to see how we can try to list and how we actually can map that, get real time, which is obviously the end goal, right? This is what it's all about. It's about how do I have the activities at every single level. So that is the way. So I'm having some bandwidth issues, so I'm sorry. Sound like Miss Piggy.
I'm just take a look at the results of folks that replied. Just do jazz. It's okay. People here obviously using Outlook tasks, and I'm sure Mark that yes, I'm using Outlook. That's what they're really doing. If you're like me, you probably have hundreds or thousands of items. But you have these are then using, and then good old pen and paper. So not surprised there. But it is something that I think increasingly, certainly information workers want to see this problem solved. Excited that Microsoft is going to be making investments. All right, let's jump over to done the poll, and we'll attempt to do this. So Naomi, the topic is what's going on with Yammer, and are you back on with your audio?
With Yammer, there's been a lot of updates. So, and one of the main things I think we've seen is that the user experience. Thank you for the thumbs up. The user experience has fundamentally changed with Yammer. We have a more responsive design now, which is a great enhancement. Everybody's been asking for a very long time that there was too much white space on the sides of the pages. So now, even if you have a large monitor or kind of a small monitor, you can actually see some of that. So it's a nice sort of uptake on the newer designs. I think there's a lot of other new features that are rolling out as well as part of that. So we're seeing a lot more A/B testing. So if you guys haven't been keeping up, please go to the Office 365 network, so yammer.com/ITPro network, and then see that there's an enterprise social services and updates group there. And that's kind of the best place to keep up to date with a lot of A/B testing. So we've seen things like all of the new areas around external messaging come out. We're seeing just a couple of days ago, they started a new A/B test on the top feed. So it's now the Discover feed. They also tried renaming All Company for a little while. So that's another thing there. So All Company became general and company-wide for a little bit. So if you've seen that test too. So it's kind of, there's been a lot of different A/B testing. So there's a lot of improvement coming to the platform. June 24th, we just saw the release of Office Online as well. So when you go to edit a document and you've uploaded it in Office 2013 and above, you'll see now that Office Online pops up when you try to edit the document and have that as a preview experience as opposed to a PDF viewer, which is what it was before. And then we're going to see it towards the end of this month, the single user editing is going to come out too for Office Online through Yammer. So we're seeing a lot more integration on the platform, and just slowly, things are trickling out there. Obviously, earlier this year, they moved it over to the Global Foundation Services as well, so that Yammer is now not being hosted in a separate data center. It's part of Azure, and as such, will be going into the Office 365 Trust Center, so that some of these really great compliance and certifications can be part of that. Also for the EU model clauses, HIPAA compliance, all that kind of stuff. So some really great things that have been going on there. And I know it's hard to keep up with the A/B testing. I think that is something that people do struggle with in companies, and it can be difficult to how you communicate some of that change with users as well. So I know that's one of the areas. So I think some of the document conversations Daryl's mentioning too. So that was one I was really sorry to see that they're let go for a little while anyway, which was this fly-out panel that was coming out on the Office 365. So Word document or PowerPoint documents, you'd see a Yammer conversation panel coming out on the side. It's still going to be there in OneDrive 65 video. So that panel will bring back something even better. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of the conversation interface going into different places. So there's a lot going on with different A/B testing right now with Yammer and the interface. So anyway, sorry.
I was just going to say that that's a great point, and that Daryl brings up about those conversations. That was actually a key feature when for the people that were being told to move off of the native SharePoint, the on-prem capability, that was going to solve those document conversations, going to solve that kind of granular conversation around artifacts. That was the key functionality to kind of give that same experience. And now with it gone, Interesting.
You're stopping there. I think, I think,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about change management in a little bit, not with respect to Yammer, but with Office 365 in general, Naomi. And one of the things that I've found is that I just can't keep up with Yammer. In fact, I've sort of stopped using it because I ended up in so many different groups and so many different networks, and the interface kept changing so much that I've found that it's just too much. I'd rather not know anything than try to sift through as much as I'm subscribed to. And I think the picture there of you laughing is probably about the right response based on me saying this. So, unless you want to be full-time in Yammer, I find that it's difficult to consume, and I'm hoping that will improve. To me, it's like the MSDN forums, but without search. And that lack of search, lack of ability to sort of go back in time at all, is something that I'm really hoping is on somebody's mind, because Yammer as a real-time tool is awesome, but unless you're glued to your screen, you really can't keep up with it. It is like Facebook in that sense, but Yammer actually should contain stuff I care about more, because there's actually work stuff. It's not about people's cats. And so I should be able to go back and look at what's been going on recently in that Yammer feed, and I don't know that I can really do that. So it seems to me, even though you've just listed a whole bunch of things that have come out as new little featurelets, I would say, because they're sort of side things to me, the mainstream of Yammer doesn't seem to have changed all that much in the last 2 or 3 years.
3 years.
And that's the part that I think most people struggle with. It's not all of these little adjunct things that seem to sort of be put on there as bolt-ons and then disappear or change or whatever. It's how do I actually use Yammer itself? And that's
if I
what else? For the first time.
I was just gonna but just.
No, for the first time, honestly, I 100% agree with Mark. Whoa!
Oh my God!
What's happening? No, I've been a long time fan. I think we've been using Yammer since I think it was 2011. I've said it many times at SPC Anaheim, and we loved it. Yammer came in through our organizations, through somebody. It wasn't an executive decision or anything. It just spread like wildfire. Everyone kind of slowly dropped emails over time, and we've been having conversation in Yammer. The thing is kind of, like you said, it kind of stopped there, but not just stopped there. It kind of, it got tortured a little bit, didn't it? Or at least I feel like it. And obviously you start seeing these new startups coming up, and Slack is an example, but I'm sure there's tons of other ones where what I find recently, and Mark really said it very well for that, is recently I'm seeing checklist of features being presented. So this is there, this is there, this is there, this is there. But when you're actually using, or where's the flow of work? I don't feel anybody's taking care of the user experience. And I hope, I apologize if there is. I just feel like there's a missing piece of flow. And we've got the features on paper, and they're all there. There's the document co-authoring and collaboration and everything, but when I'm actually using Yammer, it doesn't come up. I don't feel like I'm using it. And so slowly, in all honesty, even internally here, and some of our, at least smaller customers that are able to jump to that dynamically and organically jump to other products have been. And I think that's the trickier part. So hopefully, something's going to happen there so that in user experience wise, there's a little bit improvements there. I hope that makes sense. I am French, so sometimes not so much. What were you going to say, Christian?
I was going to, as it happens from time to time here on CollabTalk, is a little bit of self-promotion. But you guys have just set this up for my new company here. We actually just did a press release last week about our SharePoint Yammer integration. And I'll add the link down here so you can take a look at the blog post that describes it. But to the topic, You guys are spot on. It's I've long written on the topic of that social, when it's disconnected from the work activity, it decreases the usefulness of the social interactions. There are certain use cases which Yammer is brilliant at. It is my primary tool that I use for community development, especially external communities, partners and customer communities. It's a fantastic, easy to use, quick, up and running, people invited, collaborating within a minute. It's fantastic. But when in context to the way that we're working with SharePoint and that end-to-end user experience, it's less useful for me to be working on documents, to work in a workflow, that doing these business activities and then having to go outside to another URL. And that's why when I made the comment about those document conversations where you're having that Yammer-like threaded discussion in context to the files, rather than going out somewhere else and adding to the mess of messaging that's coming in to your Yammer, your Yammer view, or into your inbox if you have the alerts set up. It's really become this burdensome back and forth between what is becoming just two different data silos. So when you're able to have it as a unified experience where it's all, and what my company does is all inside of SharePoint, then it ties those things together and it unifies them. And I think it both presents a better way of using Yammer when and also makes the collaborative point more powerful. So, that's to address, and I think that there's plenty of conversations that are going on. We don't yet have visibility into everything that's planned, but I'll put the link down here below if people want to take a look at the blog post and they can see what we're talking about in our way of solving that problem. Sorry, is that too much? I'll get, it's close tags, close soapbox, and I will put that in so people can take a look. Naomi, any final words on the Yammer topic before we jump over to change management?
I think there's some good chat going on in terms of thinking about Yammer as a service and really having it as a conversation layer across the company. And we really should be distinct about curating the conversations and having basically a knowledge base for those conversations versus which app we use to actually have those conversations. So, I mean, really separating which we always do in IT, right, from the actual presentation app that we're actually entering the content into. So if you prefer to communicate through Outlook, if you prefer to communicate through an app, if you prefer to use Slack, whatever, right, you shouldn't need to worry about that. It should be one area for those conversations that go on in your company. And then being able to manage those appropriately as business records as you would do with other platforms too. So I think we're sort of seeing that evolution of the conversation getting a little bit more separated, being able to be consumed as a service inside of other apps too. So I think that's kind of the big area. I know that we need to...
Mark, what does change management look like in Office 365? I assume you've got visuals?
There's blood coming from my eyes. No, I'm not going to be all negative about this. I mean, I think that the change management is hard for everybody. we do have that of what's going on. There have been some very, very clear blog posts from the Office team, which I think it makes it clearer what is coming, or what, in most cases, has just come. At least that way, when it lands, you know sort of what you're supposed to do when you look at it. That helps a lot. But in general, I think the change management pace, if anything, is probably, it certainly hasn't gotten any slower. It's probably going just as quickly as it has been since that pace of that cadence. Remember when Microsoft used to use the word cadence in every sentence? I think that seems to have gone away. But the cadence of change on Office 365 seems to have been consistent and maybe ratcheted up a little bit. It's not the same thing that it was a few months ago. It's not going to be the same thing in a few months. So people are just going to have to get used to it. I think that internally, the organizations that I'm working with are still totally struggling with this. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to tell their users. They don't know how to describe something new that's come out when it happens, because they don't really understand it either. Being an Office 365 sort of admin or power user inside a company is becoming a more time-consuming job, because you need to read all of these different blog posts. You do need to watch the Channel 9 videos and stuff that I never get to. There's more content consumption. It's like a living manual. It's all out there in bits and pieces all over the place, and you've got to actively go out and find those sources and try to track them. Maybe there could be one place where we have all of those sources together that would make it easier to consume them. How could we do that? IT Unity could be that, I suppose, eh? So anyway, it's not a real negative take on what's going on with change management, but I do think it's still hard. What do you guys think, Ben? I see you going with your beards. You get to jump.
I heard there was a pop-up that said, "This is Delve," and then this is your me section. Have a good day, But I'd like to see a little bit more to help the end users or the business users, whoever's using the service and consuming it, so that they can kind of get the information themselves, if that makes sense, right? Kind of a how-to, like, hey, and many tools these days, all of the ones, the good ones at least that have, small startups, or even the larger organizations, whenever I've started subscribing or using a service, and right now I'm going to use Slack as an example, and I know I don't want to be, it's just fresh in my mind because we've literally just started using it quite a bit. And as soon as I didn't want to use it, obviously I've been Yammer all the way, didn't want to get in, but basically we needed live conversation. There's no Skype for Business for Macs, and there's Link 2011, my bad. But essentially kind of switched on. I said, no. And then at one point I'm like, okay, well, everybody's working over there. I'm going to have to kind of go see what's going on. And I logged in, and I got a pop-up, hey, this is where this is, this is where this is, you click here, this happens, this is how we think, and you've got your own personal assistant that you can ask questions to, and it's going to give you answers, and it really helped me adopt it a lot quicker and a lot faster. And I find that's the only piece that I find missing when we're talking about Office 365, and yeah, we've got great roadmap blog posts, we've got some things, but business users don't follow that. And as you said, Mark, we can't follow everything happening. There's Power BI coming in, the CRM coming in, there's this, there's Wunderlist coming in, there's SharePoint this coming in, there's SharePoint 26. We can't possibly be following everything. And then when it comes on, sometimes automatically we get 3,000 requests from users saying, how do we use this? What is this? And so on and so on. So I think it'd be nice to have a sort of a Clippy, funny now. But yeah, honestly, 2016 version of Clippy, a little bit more. That's my opinion. I don't know. Naomi is probably going to tell me I'm completely wrong. What do you think, Naomi?
And Cortana, I think Clippy and Cortana need to have a love child. Let's wait. Do I get a point for that? So I think it is part of that. I do see that we're evolving some of the functionality up the stack, and I do think that's kind of the tension right now, is that we're rolling out all these different features and functionalities, and it's all into the different products, and this whole thing rolls up into Office 365, and I think we're struggling with that, and I think it is good. So Cliptana, I love it. So it's like really in terms of what solution packages do we need to roll out to people, and I think that we're really at that part where it's around the digital workplace and making sure that we have a vision of the digital workplace for our different companies. And it has never been as important as it is now to actually have a collaboration strategy. For once, have a collaboration strategy and really think about what you need to deliver to your end users. And then think about how you map those different technologies, because those technologies are going to have more and more flux over time. So as you try to be a more agile business, as you try to sort of grow the kind of culture and a consumer type
Ooh.
I think that the one problem that I have with that is they don't know what you've got, right? You may or may not get something new, and you may or may not run across it. So it's still a communication issue. I think that Microsoft, and it's a cop-out to say it's a service instead of a product. Microsoft then needs to communicate as if it were a service, meaning telegraphing a little bit more
saying,
and what we have. So, first release, great. I've also got, and I'll say it even though it's secret, I have what's called a canary tenant. So I'm allowed to see things even earlier than that, but I don't know what I have. So unless people tell you what it is you need to look at, then I think that in itself is not enough. There need to be words coming with those things, and that's what I'd love to see sort of ramp up. It doesn't have to be lots of documentation, but better. Sure. Yep. Coming next week. Yeah. Coming next week. Watch your profile for an update. Something like that. Where, otherwise we have no idea. It just becomes a different profile, and that can't be.
Absolutely, communication method. That's what I think we're saying is that this is a service, and they need to change the model of, instead of thinking of giving us a product, they're giving us offering that service, and we're subscribing to it. So, I'm expecting newsletters as an admin perhaps that says, hey, this month in Office 365, what's coming? And not necessarily having to go to the roadmap and read, sometimes I don't even know what actually is going to change. So yeah, however it comes, I think a good communication plan, and then, we can pass it along to our end users and so on. All right, I'm talking too much. There it is.
We're done.
Classic.
You got the finger watch.
Here together on August 12th. So we'll be talking about, as you see here, we're going to talk about the 2016 beta release. We're going to go through and talk about the cloud search service application for hybrid. We're going to talk Gig Jam. And then we're going to talk about the Cortana analytics and the Power BI analytics that were also announced at WPC. So thank you, Mark, Naomi, Ben, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll hopefully see you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, the room's been closed, so you guys can get on your mic.
All right.
We turn the recording off?
Yeah, the recording's off. Thanks.